soul. That gal of mine lives down the road. Now down the road just a mile or two lives a little girl named Pearly Blue. About so high and her hair is brown, the prettiest thing boys in his town. Now every time I get the blues, I walk the soles right off my shoes. I don't know why I love her so. That gal of mine lives down the road.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Where'd the old town go? They moved it all north of here in the shopping mall.
Good morning and welcome to Old Town Cleveland here on WOOP FM 99.9, or go to the internet at www.woopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. Good morning, Debbie Moore. Tell me what's going on.
Good morning, Ron. It's November the 28th, 2015, a beautiful, clear day outside today. I'm sure a lot of folks will be getting some decorations done and some recovery from Thanksgiving and shopping today. We have some really special guests with us here today. We've got Sean Patch from North Carolina, that's an archaeologist, and Aaron Pritchard from Knoxville, from TVA, and we're going to be talking about Hiwassee Island.
Sounds fun there. And also our good buddy Frodaddy, who is actually up today, which is amazing.
At 10 a.m.
10
He's
a.m.
alive and well.
He's going to call us, and he's doing a little remote today. He'll call us about 10:30 and tell us what he's doing down at Busy Bees out on Spring Place, their grand opening, I believe it is. So we'll talk with him, and it's always rare to find Frodaddy up and sober and sane. You know, so those things,
especially on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, that's really a weird combination. He may not be sane. Let's not go that far.
Hey, Ron, let's go ahead and talk about what's going to be next week's show. We've been looking forward to this.
Yes, we got the
Burns.
Yes, Jim Burns is coming in to talk about the Redback hymnal, the classic gospel hymnal used in churches all over America. A lot of the songs written right here in Cleveland, Tennessee, and the book published here in Cleveland, Tennessee, still today.
Printed,
published, the whole works right here.
Right here in Cleveland, Tennessee.
The museum now has a permanent display exhibit about that.
That's that big word.
Yeah, you go down to the museum and you can see that. It's in a permanent. It's in the hallway there before you get to the main exhibit hall. They've got a little section right there. And so go by and see that, and I think you can actually push a button and play some of the music.
See some old pictures of folks printing.
I wasn't here for the grand opening. I was gone that night. Deb, I think you went to it.
Yeah, I had a great time.
They actually had a group of people sang from the old hymnal, and it was a lot of fun, I understand. I didn't get to go to that one. But
and the week after that, we're going to be talking about Old Christmas. Before the date was changed to December the 25th, I think people celebrated Christmas maybe on January the 6th. And that word didn't get to some folks in Appalachia. And so we'll be talking about that.
Some people don't take down their Christmas trees still now to the 6th because of that reason. We don't take ours down to April because,
it's just too much trouble.
Too much trouble, yeah.
And then the week after that, Ron, we have Tim McCoy coming back into town, a local fella, and he's going to be talking about the Union supporters here in Bradley County, and that same weekend we'll be dedicating 3 new Civil War historical markers. And he's played some part in that along with Brian Reed, and we're real proud of that. And then our very final show of the season will be our good friend Randall Higgins, and he'll be talking about 40 years as a newspaper man. And he always has great stories for us.
I hope he didn't telling us about all the lies he told. Or this was all news, right?
Randall's the one that came up and when we did Caney Creek and went up to the site with us, and somehow we ended up on the front page of the Chattanooga Times. Is where when you're promoting something and it's good, that's where you want to be.
And I imagine we could ask Randall about his famous uncle, Krill Higgins. If you're a local person, you'll remember Krill Higgins. He was the band director at Bradley High School for many years, and then went on and became the first band director over at Cleveland High School, and just a really great guy in the community.
Ron, tell everybody how we met Sean.
We went to into Cherokee, North Carolina. The Cherokee tribe put on a archaeological symposium.
Could you spell that, please?
No. Archaeological symposium. And Sean made a presentation that day. There was 2 days of presentations by archaeologists and people that knew a whole lot more about anything and everything than I did. And some of the people talked over my head quite a bit, you know. And but Sean came and started talking about Hiawassee Island, something that we're all very familiar with. Deb was on the board of directors over at the removal park there, so we're very familiar with the area. And, of course, everyone heard that, you know, it's also called Jolly Island in our area, and Sam Houston lived there, supposedly. And so, but Sean showed his study that he's done. He was hired by TVA, his company, to do this research there. And it was just amazing what he could show us and that. And before we go,
Before he could sit down, Ron and I were talking to him.
But before we go any further talking about Hiawassee Island, Aaron, tell them what people can't do on that island. Make sure everybody knows that before we get started.
It is illegal to pick up artifacts and dig up archaeological materials on TVA land, including Hiawassee Island.
Yeah, and you can go on. You're welcome to go on the island, right?
Yes.
Except this time of year.
This time of year it is closed. TWA manages the island for the Sandhill Cranes.
Right.
It is going to be closed. I think it is closed.
It's December 1st until February, end of February?
Through February,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Just to protect the cranes.
That's correct.
right,
Yes.
and there should be coming in pretty heavily in the next 2 weeks. You could go over. There's a spot right past the removal park you can see over here, and look over towards the islands, and then at the removal park there's a outlook you can look over on the island there.
Mhm.
So you
Actually,
can go on the
there's
island. Don't dig. Don't pick up don't pick up a rock. Don't do anything.
Take pictures.
It
Take
is a
pictures.
historical place, and it should be treated that way. And like I say, it is. There are 2 laws would cover that. It's federal land by TVA, and also the Indian Artifact Law. I don't know that you know what that rule is, Sean.
There's one
exactly.
that applies specifically to federal lands, and Aaron can talk about that. It's the Archaeological Resources Protection Act, which
Right.
applies to federal property.
Right.
It's also covered under state law. There's state
Right.
laws protecting archaeological sites on
Yeah.
state land.
You can't. You don't supposed to be able to dig up any type of Indian artifacts, and particularly you can't sell Indian artifacts. So be very aware of that. So although it's a treasure, and probably over the years the island has been raided several times by people, and
Yes.
so we know that's happening, but don't do it anymore. So Sean, tell us a little bit about who you work for and how you got involved in this project.
Sure. I work for a private consulting firm called New South Associates, and it's actually based in Stone Mountain, Georgia, but I work in the North Carolina branch office. And for the past several years, we have worked with TVA on different archaeological projects. One of the specialties that I have personally is geophysical prospecting. So I run ground-penetrating radar and magnetic radiometry, and we apply that to archaeological sites, and it's non-invasive. So we can go out, collect data over an area, and then we can process the data we have. And generally, if the site conditions are good, we can determine with a fairly high degree of accuracy what types of remains are still in the ground. So for Hiawassee, as you guys saw in Cherokee, most of the site is still there, and there's some very, very high definition features out there. There's several palisades, there are individual houses, there's a large plaza area, and all of those are visible in the data. You can't see them on the ground today because they're buried, but these instruments allow us to get images of what's buried without having to excavate. And we've done several of these projects with TVA over the last few years. Hiawassee is probably the biggest one we've done to date in terms of the size, and it's also the most complicated because of the size. And it's also the most interesting because of the history of Hiawassee and because of the data we got back. The results were really impressive.
Let me ask some questions here. I have the book Hiawassee Island that was printed decades ago, and it shows when TVA started to flood the island. Is that correct? Or what portions they were going to flood? Did they actually excavate just those portions?
Yes and no. In the 30s, when the WPA folks were excavating there, they focused primarily on what we call the Mississippian Village, which was the big Indian village on the northern end of the island. That's where they focused the bulk of their effort, because that was the focus of their research at the time. It had a large mound on it, which is now gone, and they spent maybe a year or more excavating in that particular area. But they also excavated other mounds on the island that are now flooded and submerged. But the bulk of the island that is underwater today is on the downstream side. So maybe half the acreage or so of the original 780 is underwater today, and the other half is still above water, which is unusual for a lot of TVA property, particularly for the big archaeological sites, of which Hiawassee is one of those. And so that's why Hiawassee is so unique.
What did you find that dated the oldest on the island? How far back are we on that island? We're way back.
The overall archaeological remains go very far back. They're back into what we call the Archaic period, so they're several thousand years old. And there's probably evidence of earlier occupations, but because of the setting for Hiawassee Island, and that it's in the middle of the river and it has flooded every year for tens of thousands of years, the deposits have built up so that if there's very, very early material there, it's not within reach of anything we can find it. So what we're looking at today, when we're out there, is the most recent Indian occupation, which is roughly AD 1000 to AD 1500, and then a little bit later. Obviously, there's Cherokee folks there later on, but the primary.
The Cherokees were the new kids on the block. I mean, they came much later than all that. Yeah, just a couple hundred years ago.
Yes.
That is amazing.
So this dates back to right after the pyramids, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it'd be equivalent to that. Yeah, in the pyramids, I'll get my chronology wrong, but roughly 3000 BC, 2000 BC, something like that. But there are remains from Hiawassee that go back that far.
That's
so
amazing.
so in America we could call that our pyramids, right?
It's something like that. Yeah, it's equivalent to that.
It's kind of a simple way to look at it, but we have to look at it that way. But now,
a lot of people when they think mounds, of course, and we're very guilty of them, that they're huge things.
Yesterday I kept showing him huge hillsides, and he goes, "No, Debbie, that's a hill."
But and there is some huge sites in Georgia, North Georgia particularly. But the mounds here will be smaller and more of a burial mound.
Yeah,
Like
there's
Hamilton
two
mounds?
types of mounds. Right, Hamilton mounds are one term. There's typically two types of mounds in East Tennessee. One are what we call Hamilton burial mounds, and then platform mounds. And the burial mounds, or what are called Hamilton mounds, typically only have human burials in them, and those date roughly from AD 700 to AD 1200, and they were used again primarily for burials. The platform mounds are common to what we call Mississippian sites. Those are slightly later in time. Those are at AD 1000 to about AD 1500, and those are flat-topped. Those were built specifically for buildings to be on top. And there's archaeologists disagree about whether they were used for elite residences or if they were used for ceremonial purposes or public buildings, but they did have buildings on top of those. And each time a building ceased to be used, it was either burned deliberately or accidentally, and then the next occupation folks brought in the new layer of dirt to build on top of that, and they built another house
for a
on top.
new beginning
for a new
or
beginning.
something.
So those tended to increase in size over time. And the one at Hiawassee that was excavated was about 22 feet high, which is one of the largest ones in East Tennessee. It's now gone, but it was one of the largest ones.
Hamilton, was it what you would
That
call
was
it?
not. No, that was a platform mound.
A platform mound.
That's correct. And there's still one burial mound on Hiawassee, and there are a few others. Actually, there are a couple there. One has been mostly excavated, but there are still a couple out there.
Now the big where the Palisades was that a platform?
The Palisade was not a platform. It was. There's two ways they built those. One, they would dig a trench, narrow trench, maybe a foot wide, and they set the posts inside the trench so to create the upright stockade. And we think they did that in the early part of the Mississippian period, roughly AD 1100 to AD 1300. And then the large palisades that we identified in the geophysical data, the very, very big ones, we think were actually excavated where they created what would essentially be a moat in front, and then they build a berm of dirt behind the moat, and then they would have a stockade behind that as well. And we can see that in our data. We have a pretty good idea of what they look like. So there's two different types of construction that
That's
that
kind of
do have
like what's at
different timelines.
Cartersville.
That's right.
That has
Yeah.
the big, like a moat in
That's
front
right.
of it.
Etowah Mounds has a large moat.
Explain to folks why these people would choose to be someplace like Hawaii Island.
Well, Hiawassee probably had two good reasons to be there. One, it was defensible because it was
It'd take a while for
It-
folks to get across the river to you.
couldn't get across the river easily, but also it's fertile ground. So the Mississippian folks were reliant primarily on maize agriculture, on corn, and the fields there are great for growing corn. So it was we see that up and down the Tennessee River, those kinds of areas where there's big floodplains and there's dry ground. That's usually a favorable spot for Indians to have had a village.
And there was livestock on there too. I mean, deer and such also.
There were animals out there as well. Yeah, yeah.
Now, how do you prove that they grew corn and squash and beans?
Well, we find those remains of those archaeologically.
What would that be?
How would it be? It would be the actual pollen grains or kernels of corn that show up in burned features. So, for example, if there were a burned hearth where someone had a fire and they prepared a meal, the remains of that may actually still be there. And when we come along and excavate those, we can pick up traces of that, and we can find those remains.
See, Ron, that's a good reason for me not to clean my oven, because someday someone will be able to tell what we as ancient people ate because
Well,
of the
there's a bunch
remains.
there then, okay. Aaron, real quick, right now the island is owned by TVA, but you
Yes.
lease it to TWRA. Is that correct?
They have an easement, yes,
Okay.
for the wildlife management area.
And so, does someone still plant? Is there someone who's actually planting crops on there?
Part of the island is still they have crops on it. I think
Mhm.
it changes out, but it's in soybeans right now, and so the TWA leases it to a farmer.
A farmer, and I think the farmer leaves a part of his crop there
Correct.
for the wildlife.
For the
For wildlife.
wildlife, because
Yeah.
there are actually deer and such still on the island.
Yes.
We were talking about the Sandhill Cranes earlier. The best viewing date we understand will be December the 12th. And the wildlife refuge is right there at the Blythe Ferry removal, right across the river from Hawaii Island, and it's located at 505 Armstrong Road in, is that Decatur
Well, it's Meigs County. I'd say, yeah, Decatur, but
or Birchwood?
Birchwood.
Birchwood sounds
might be
better.
Yeah.
505 Armstrong Road in Birchwood, if someone needs to GPS that to get there. That is actually 6,000 acres, the refuge there is. And I wrote down that no humans are allowed on Hawaii Island from the 1st of November to the last of February each year for the protection of the sandhill crane. And if you haven't seen those big old birds, that's a pretty interesting thing to see. We always take our little grandbaby to see them, and she calls them the big birds.
And unfortunately, the state of Tennessee now is allowing hunting of those birds, but not on the refuge. But they've now, in the last
Can't imagine.
2 years, they
But-
have agreed to allow hunting there. So it wasn't one of the things that we supported here on our radio station, but Senator Bell.
Now listen.
No, Mike's a good guy. Now, I've read something lately, and when I read, it's, I read every other word maybe. Or so, as I get older, I can't see as good. But the first recorded person to own that, it was F.A. Ross, and I don't know who F.A. Ross is. If that's a relative of John Ross, the principal chief of the Cherokee Indians, or not. But and then after that, there was land grants for it, and next thing you know, there's a couple of people, and one of them was Thomas Calloway, who built many of the homes, the big homes here in Bradley County. He was a land speculator, and he built a lot of the very nice homes still standing in Bradley County now. And then some other gentleman got it, and they had a lawsuit for years and years and years.
They did. It's really interesting. I don't recall all the details off the top of my head, but it was interesting. It was actually tied up in court for decades throughout
Yes.
the 1800s. And it was finally resolved, and again, I can't recall which way it went, but once a judge determined where the rivers stopped and started, that was the final resolution for that.
It was funny reading those tidbits about that lawsuit, that it was one place would say, well, because the water comes around on the eastern side, it's obviously belongs to, this county. And because it comes over on this side, it obviously belongs to that county. And finally, some judge had to decide.
That's right.
But basically, the land grants had been given from two different sides. And so there was a quarrel over the land.
an island sort of tells me that water goes around both sides.
Yeah.
But I guess I got more water went on the other side. But anyway, it's pretty interesting that, before 1830-ish, there was no registered deeds of
Nope.
who owned the property.
Nope.
So
this was the Indians. And of course, when would the Mississippians probably have died out
Or left.
or left, or what
don't know
what
really
happened?
Well, that's
to
a really good question, and there's not a lot of good information about that. But in general, we think of the Mississippian groups being around from about AD 1000 to about 1500. Now that those dates fluctuate a little bit. They go a little later in some areas, and they go out a little earlier in other areas. But in East Tennessee, it's well into the 1500s, and then there's. I don't want to get too much into the historic tribes because I don't know a lot about it, and I will get in trouble if I say too much.
Well,
but
you're going to be ahead of me, so
Well,
I just
but
agree
that's
with you.
where we get into historic tribes like the Muskogee Creek and the Cherokee, and we start talking about those folks and determining when the archaeological folks become identified with historic tribes is a little bit difficult. We don't know that with certainty, but certainly by the time the Spanish came through here, there were still Indian tribes living in the area, and they tend to have a Mississippian life way. In other words, they were growing corn, they were living in large nucleated villages, they had mounds, they had palisades, and so that type of lifestyle did exist for quite some time.
Let's back up just a little bit, guys, and tell people where Hiwassee Island's located. I mean, we really didn't do that. Aaron, tell us where it's located, or
It's located at the confluence of the Hiwassee River and the Tennessee River.
Mhm.
And it's in Meigs County.
Mm-hmm. Meigs County would be on one side of the river, and Ray County's on the other side of the river,
McMinn.
correct?
McMinn on the other side, and Ray is on the other side of the river. Ray
That's what I
County's on
think.
on the other side of the island is McMinn County.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, McMinn and
Are you
Meg.
sure?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
pretty sure. Am I right? Because Ray
Maybe-
County's across
I
the
would have
river.
thought that I knew, but now that you've,
I would have thought I
you've
knew.
introduced doubt into my
Well,
mind.
someone will call and correct.
Somebody
some
will
of-
call in.
But I'm almost sure that McMinn County lies to the north, and the south side is Meigs County, and then across the river, Ray County starts across the Tennessee River.
I think that's-
I'm looking at a map that doesn't say McMinn County on it anywhere.
Now, or it could be Meigs County on both sides too. Now, that might be.
I don't think it's Meigs County on both sides.
You may right. Now, Meigs
It's-
County is an interesting county because it's the smallest fourth smallest county in the nation, and the widest point is 10 Mile, Tennessee, because it's 10 miles wide.
I'm pretty sure it's Meigs County on one side and Ray County on the other.
I don't think it's right. I could be wrong. I've been wrong.
When you
She's
go across,
pointing, she's pointing at the map. Okay, it's Ray County.
but
I hate to
that's
lose an
funny.
argument.
That's funny how we have that one little thing that I don't know. We can tell you about people that
I-
lived 5,000 years ago, but we don't know.
I didn't think Ray County was on this side of the river, though.
Ray County, when you cross the bridge, you're in Ray County then.
Mhm.
You know, he hadn't crossed the bridge there yet. Because the Hiwassee Island is on this side of the Tennessee River.
Quit being so technical.
Okay. I could be wrong.
Okay, folks, when you're on Highway 60 and you cross the big river at Tennessee River, the Hiwassee Island would be there as you're going into Ray County on your right.
Mhm.
You can really see it from the lookout at the Bice Ferry Removal Park. You can see it really nicely. And occasionally you will see an eagle there.
If you know how to get to the old ferry, where you go into the old ferry, if you go into the water, you went a little too far.
Yep,
Mhm.
you're right there.
There's nothing to stop you go around that road, but just before you get to the foot of the ferry, there you turn right into the Cherokee Park. You go up to the top of the hill, and there's a lookout. If you look out over that is Hiwassee Island out there. Now, and like I say, and then if you go just a couple hundred more feet, you're in the Tennessee River. It's literally right there at the river.
It sure is.
And so, and one time you said it was 700 acres, and that'd been before TVA started
right.
flooding, right?
It was about 700, 780 acres, I think, give or take a few. And I don't recall the exact acreage today, but it's in the 400 to 450 range. So about
So-
half of it, give or take a little.
So it was well over a square mile to begin with.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was a big. Yeah, and it's about a mile and a half or almost 2 miles from one end to the other. It's
a big island.
It's a big island, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the largest islands.
You know, and all you can see really from the removal park is just where the two rivers come together.
Mhm.
That, Well, I guess you could see a little bit more than that.
From
See a
the
little bit of
removal
island.
park, you look down on the western end of the island.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
That's
you
right.
did.
Yes.
So that,
The one pointing towards Ray County.
Somebody's going. There's people probably trying to call in right now, going, "I know where it is. I know where it
Yes.
is." And a lot of people have been on the island, and
A lot of people would like to be on the island.
yeah.
Me.
And once again, you cannot dig on that island. You
No,
can't
sir.
pick nothing up.
Don't even take a shovel with you.
I
You get
think-
a
yeah.
shovel.
I think
Yeah.
that the old wise tale was, or the old not wise tale was, if it's laying on the ground, I can get it and there's not a problem. But that really is a problem. And I know that there's been photographs taken of things that was exposed by the water that you just need to leave there.
Right.
Because when it leaves there, it loses its history.
Well, photographs are great. I mean, that's no problem. But just don't pick it up. And
And it's hard not to.
what is
It's hard not to.
what is the fine? Do you know what the fine is?
Mine is very
Are you
ugly.
beaten with whips or anything like that? They ought to be.
Well, if they let me do enforcement, then maybe. But no, it varies depending on what you're doing. That you can be charged with a felony if you do over $500 worth of damage
Mhm.
under the Archaeological Resource Protection Act, and felony's pretty big deal.
Yeah.
You lose your right to vote, so
And you can
definitely
go to
don't want-
jail.
You can go to jail. I think it's a maximum of $100,000 and a year
Wow.
in jail for your first offense.
Just don't do it.
Something to that effect, and then 2 years in jail and $200,000.
1 year and $100,000. There's no artifact worth picking up anywhere.
Nope.
That's just not Hiawassee Island. That's artifacts in general, but on federal land, it's even
Federal land.
yeah, it gets a little bit more. And now, let me ask you about TVA. TVA owns how much of the river going up through that way? I mean, how do you own everything in the middle of the river, or do you own anything on the side of the river?
We own, I think on Chickamauga. It varies now.
Yeah.
TVA's land ownership varies depending on which reservoir that you're in.
Right.
But on Chickamauga, we own down to, in most places, we own down to the original river channel, and then up along the bank. Varies depending on where you are on the river. But yeah, most of the lake beds, when the water goes down in the winter, most of the area that's exposed is owned and fee by TVA.
Now, we were talking about Coonditton Island earlier, and you don't believe that's part of the, it's in the Hiawassee River.
Yeah.
And for our local people, that's where they filmed Wild River. It's upriver on Upper River Road, and the little Wild River house is there. Then if you look across the river there, that's Coonditton Island, and it's a pretty big island too. I don't know,
It
it's
is.
not as big as
No, when you showed it to me yesterday, though, I was amazed at how large that is, considering how far up the Hiawassee that river it is.
Yeah.
and not a lot of history known about that. I know a family who apparently is related to Coonditton,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't know a lot about him either. I think a great grandfather. So, but you don't own everything up the river, then all the way to
No.
North Carolina.
The further you go upstream on Hiawassee Island or Hiawassee River, we don't own as much.
So it's
there's
not
a
part-
reservation boundary for Chickamauga.
Okay. I didn't know how that worked. So.
Yeah, I'd
But
have to have a map in front of me to.
But you still control the river up all the way to, because you have dams
Yes.
all the way up into North Carolina.
Yes, we still control the river system, the Tennessee River and its tributaries. Yes,
So,
flood control.
and the main purpose of TVA is flood control, right?
And
That's what it
Providing
was,
low
wasn't that
cost-
what it created?
providing low cost electricity.
Yes.
as
Okay.
well. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that was number 10.
And
on-
protecting the environment.
I think that was number 10 on the list when they originally created that, if I remember my history. Agriculture,
Yes.
flood control, channel, what do you call that? For boat traffic, navigational, that everything. But I think probably TVA is best known for keeping our power good and cheap.
Mhm.
Not cheap enough, but cheap. you haven't
Well,
lived,
compared to the other
you haven't
places
lived
in
any,
America.
you haven't lived in many other places if you think that our electricity is high.
Right.
So that's a good advertisement for you.
Thank
Now,
you.
She takes credit for all the good stuff.
Aaron, what areas do you cover beside? I mean, you're out in the Knoxville office.
I'm out of Knoxville. Yes.
So now, what all areas do you cover? Just
I
where-
cover the entire valley.
Oh, the entire valley.
Yeah, for what I do, I work on most of our stewardship type activities where we record sites. We're responsible for identifying all the archaeological sites on our property and then protecting those sites. So my job is to do a little bit of survey identification every year, figure out which sites are in most need of protection every year, and then I do our archaeological outreach and education program, and what else do I do? And our monitoring program where we go out and monitor sites.
So you've selected Ledford Island now to be looked at.
Yes, we're going to be looking at Ledford Island
And tell us
next year.
where that's at, Sean.
Ledford Island it's in the Hiawassee River, and it's very close to B&B Marina. I'm sure anyone who's been there knows where it is. It's a really high visibility spot, and that one again is TVA property, so the same admonition applies. Don't go there and pick up any artifacts. It's unfortunately Ledford has been heavily collected in the past, and we don't like to see that because it disturbs the context each time we go, and we see that kind of stuff. We don't like to see it, but it does happen. But yes, we're going to Ledford, and we'll be doing the same thing. The geophysical survey that we did at Hiawassee we'll be doing there too.
Are there
looking at
any
the
mounds
villages.
on that island that you can see?
No, Ledford Island did not have any mounds that were recorded when the WPA folks were there, but it did have a very, very large village that was later than the Hiawassee Island occupation. And by that time, folks were not building large mounds. They were still living in nucleated villages. And that one has several dozen houses on it. It has a palisade around the village, and there's a large plaza area and cemeteries there
A
too.
palisade would be like a big fence.
That's right.
Fenced-in area.
Yeah, exactly. Think about a way to defend the community. They have built a stockade around themselves so that they.
It'd be like the old forts in the Western movies. Had
A
the-
little bit.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Let's open the phones up here.
Imagine building those without, any cranes or anything, just
Oh, yeah.
human power.
Lot of work.
How
Right.
massive
Lot of-
that must be.
Folks, you're listening to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. We got Sean Patch and Aaron Pritchard here today talking about Hiawassee Island and Ledford Island and the archaeological study. I don't say that a lot. Archaeological study. You probably say that more often.
I do,
than
and I mess it up a lot
I
myself.
do.
And it looks like it has too many vowels in it when
Yeah.
I start writing it. Let me ask you this. I know that yesterday when you came into town, you drove through Princeton subdivision to see the mound there. What do you think about that mound?
Well, that's an interesting site because it's mounded today, but it was not a mound 20 years ago when it was first identified. And so what I talked to you guys about yesterday is whether it's a mound because there's been fill material that's been piled on top to create the mound as it looks today, or if all the surrounding land has been graded down to put the houses in. And I suspect it's the latter. It's not an actual mound. It wasn't a mound that the Indians built artificially. It was a village site like Hiawassee and like Ledford Island. That site is unusual because
It's definitely a village site.
definitely a village site. That's right. It's
And
unusual.
when you look at it, you think, what a wonderful, they got all that flat land where they could have grown their crops.
Yep.
If
Big-
folks don't know where we're talking about, it's on Freewheel Road, close to the old golf course, but it would be back south across the bridge from there,
Princeton Hills.
where Princeton Hill
Yeah.
is. And you can drive through the subdivision and see this
Bigsby
area.
Creek.
Mhm.
Bigsby Creek is right at the.
That site is now owned by the Archaeological Conservancy, so it's in protection, which is good, and that's why it has not been built on. But yeah, that was a village, and that village is unusual because it has a palisade as well. Actually, there are two palisades there that were identified, and what makes that unusual is the setting. It's so far from a main channel, which is where most of the big villages are, that none of us really know why it's there. Because and I can admit that it's unusual to see one like that in a setting like that.
Pre-Cherokee?
Yes,
Pre-Cherokee.
yes, late Mississippian. So
Late Mississippi.
Dallas phase, yeah, AD 1300 to
Mississippians
1500.
were agricultural folks. They lived in the same place for a long time. They could have had a village that could have been 50 people or 1,000 people.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So the
And it could have been on both sides of
Yeah.
the creek there, Bigsby Creek.
It could be, yes.
The Cherokee came into this area. Probably they're only 200, 300 years before the removal.
Yeah, they sort of they started a little farther north from here, and they moved outward from the central homeland of the Cherokee, which is in the Little Tennessee Valley. And so as they moved outward, they came into new areas, and yeah, they're not originally from this part of Tennessee, but they did live here in later decades.
Amazing amounts of them
Yes,
lived here.
large amounts, especially in the 17th and 18th centuries.
Some of the artwork going back to Hiawassee Island that was found there, it looks really prehistoric to me. I mean, I don't know What do you think about
Do you
it?
mean some of these artifacts
Thanks,
from
yeah,
Hiawassee?
yeah.
There's some really fantastic stuff. What you're looking at there on the cover of the Hiawassee book, and this volume, is what we call a shell gorget, and it's a piece of jewelry that Indians would have worn in their chest. They're really small, but they're carved from shell, and this one's particularly elaborate because it shows a warrior carrying
It's almost stuff like you would see in Mexico or something. The form of the people on it.
They
that
are
dancing and stuff.
It's referred to today. These types of artifacts that look like this are referred to as the Southeastern Ceremonial Complex, and it's basically something that's common to the Mississippian period. It's not in all Mississippian sites, but the bigger sites, the more complex ones, tend to have these types of artifacts, and they're associated usually with elite residences or chiefs or priests or people who were very, very important to the community. They're very rare artifacts, and again, not all Mississippian sites have those.
Amazing. That's what I was kind of thinking too. I haven't seen a lot of this kind of stuff. For anybody that's going, okay, Debbie Moore, where did you get that book? It comes from the University of Tennessee Press, and I believe I got this copy on Amazon. And it's one of those books that it's not a fun read. It's very technical, but it has some great pictures of, some of the remains, how they were buried. Some of them are buried stretched out. Some of them are buried kind of in a fetal position. It has pictures of the shells and the beads that were found there, and some of the tools. All black and white pictures, because this is I believe this was done when TVA was preparing to build the dams.
Right. The excavations occurred in the 1930s. I want to say 1937 to 1939, and this book was first published in 1946. And I want to say a couple things about the book because it's important for a couple of reasons. One, because of Hiawassee Island itself. Hiawassee was then and still is today one of the most famous prehistoric sites in the entire Southeast. So if folks don't know that, they should be aware of that. It's a national treasure, and it's right here in the community. So. And when Hiawassee was excavated, because of the types of artifacts that were recovered there and their types of remains, that made it really well known. But the book itself is a landmark for its time because it was published in the 1940s at a time when archaeology was just becoming a professional discipline, where people were getting beyond just digging into mounds, for example, to collect artifacts, what we call antiquarians, people who wanted to collect things for museums. And Lewis and Nieberg, the folks who wrote this book and who were responsible for the excavations, did it in a scientific manner, and they're one of the first groups of people who did that. So the book they published is a testament to their ability and to what they did, and it has withstood the test of time in that archaeologists today, even though we use high-tech methods and we're much more focused on what we do, we still look at this book and recognize it for the contribution it's made.
Do you think after you do Ledford Island, there's a possibility that TVA and you would be able to come and look at our museum and present your findings like you did at the archaeology study? Would that be something that you would be willing to do?
Sure.
I think it'd be amazing that our interest here, that people would love to see what we saw, what you showed in Cherokee, North Carolina. And that was just a very brief presentation.
Right.
You had 30 minutes, I
30
believe.
minutes. Yeah, one of the interesting things about the geophysical data is it's hard to talk about it because I can't show the listeners obviously what it looks like. But when you see the results, you don't have to be an expert to recognize what you're looking at. The results are fairly stunning. Yeah,
and this might be a good time to say that we are working with the Cherokee Memorial Museum folks to do some interpretive signage up at the Overlook. So,
and also TVA is involved in the walkway at Fort Caster in Charleston, Tennessee.
TVA has been on board and the cheerleader for that entire project up there. We have to really brag on them that they have encouraged all of that development up there.
And
fully.
Now, and you've seen, Sean, yesterday that the National Park Service has actually put up signs saying entering Fort Caster, the original Trail of Tears. As Deb says, she'd go out to the National Trail of Tears meeting and it says, you're 400 miles from Fort Cass. Well, there's never a ground zero sign anywhere.
There was not a sign that says this is Fort Cass, and it would just absolutely.
So, but TVA is and really thank them for what they're doing there in Charleston, Tennessee. It's probably another most historical places in America that very few people know exactly where it is.
Another exciting thing going on here, Sean, is the fact that the National Park Service has come in and purchased part of Moccasin Bend.
Oh, great.
Another truly prehistoric site, and there's going to be an interpretive center there in our lifetime. And I am so excited. While you were sitting there talking about that, I was thinking, boy, it would really be nice if we had some kind of interpretive center on Hawaii Island too. But I know that it would be more difficult to get to.
A little harder to get to.
Moccasin Bend is very exciting, and the Browns Ferry Tavern is on the opposite side of the river. You will see that exit off of I-75 as you go through. There is a conservatorship that is in the processes of trying to buy that tavern to save it, because developers had bought the property and they're putting in some sort of subdivision or something, which I'm all for. But it's okay to leave that little tavern there and let that pre or late 1700 tavern still stand and be open for the public to see. And so I'm really excited about that. And we understand as soon as the ownership changes hands, they're going to have some open house tours to raise a little bit of money back. And if anybody has a foundation or something that wants to give money to a good cause, that's a really good cause, is to save the Brown Ferry Tavern. Very exciting stuff going on. So we have Blythe's Ferry, we'll have Fort Cass, we have
The removal park.
the removal park. When folks come to this area, they're really in Red Clay, our good friend Aaron down at Red Clay, that's working real hard to keep that going.
Yeah, I think Aaron was talking for a moment about the work they're doing at Blythe Ferry. I'd like to hear more about that. The signage, the interpretive work.
Right. Yeah, we're actually going to take the results of the geophysical survey, and we're going to get an artist to do some drawings of what
I
the
love
village
it.
may have looked like.
I love it because it's hard for people to imagine.
Very hard.
There were no teepees there.
No teepees. Don't
No
go.
teepees.
No.
No teepees.
No
Correct.
smoke signals?
No smoke
Okay.
signals. Well, there may have been smoke signals. I don't know about that, but I just know that
They
those
were
people
cooking.
did not live in teepees.
Well, archaeology is very hard to see.
Yes.
So this will give the public an opportunity to actually see
Mm-hmm.
why archaeologists do archaeology. It's not just for the artifacts; it's to reconstruct the way these people lived a long time ago. So, so we'll take the excavations that were done in the 30s, and then studies that were done. We did some excavation work in the 80s and 90s, and then take the geophysical work, and then kind of put all those together. And we're actually going to work with the tribes as well to do some reconstructions of what the island may have looked like. It'll be difficult. It'll be difficult because we have to use a lot of artistic license because we weren't there, but it'll
I
give
think
us an
that's a
idea.
fabulous idea. I had the most interesting experience there looking out over Hawaii Island. When we dedicated the park, I believe it was in 2008, I was there for the dedication, and they kind of grabbed me and said, will you go with these folks up to the top and overlook the river? And it was chiefs and people from Oklahoma and people from North Carolina and you know, people that were highly moved by being there, where they know that their families had spent the long fall. And as we went up the ramp, and when we got to the very top, I was explaining this is the Hawaii Island and this is the Tennessee River, and an eagle flew by. And I thought, okay, thank you. There's special effects.
You paid him.
Cutie. Now,
Cue the eagle. It was really a moving moment for them.
Yeah.
real quick,
For me.
coming in March, Troy Poteet will be here. He is the Supreme Court Justice of the Cherokee Nation, and he's also involved, the Executive Director of the National Trail of Tears. He will be here, and he portrays Sam Houston, someone who lived on what later
Jolly's
called
Island.
Jolly Island.
Right.
Now, when you done all the study and you found all this stuff, the Mississippians, which is just amazing that you can still find it, could you find Cherokee stuff, and could you tell the difference? I mean, how do you do that?
Two questions there. Can we find Cherokee materials? Yes. Can we tell the difference? Not very easily is the
That's right,
answer. So yes, there is and there should be Cherokee buildings out there. There should be Cherokee houses from the late 1700s through 1819, so a 30 to 40 year period. And we know from historic documents that there were roughly 300 Cherokees living there during that time period. So they were living in houses. Those remains should be there somewhere. Lewis and Nieberg, when they excavated, didn't identify any houses from the Cherokee. They did recover a lot of European trade artifacts that are likely from Cherokee or maybe even Creek burials, probably.
Right.
But yes, they should be there. And what we found in the geophysical results was what I think may be some indications of Cherokee houses. Those are very close to where the big platform mound was. Again, it's no longer there, but there's a very high density of houses in that area that's unusual, again, for a Mississippian site. They should be more spread out than that. And looking at the historic documents, we know that Chief Jolly's group was living in that part of the island, which makes me think that some of those are probably Cherokee houses. The only way to know that with certainty would be to go excavate them, which there's no plan to do. But just looking at the size and the density and where they are, that suggests to me that those are probably, some of those are Cherokee houses.
In another little book that I picked up, and folks, I don't know where I got this at. I may have gotten it at the Museum Center, and I may have gotten it in Meigs County. At the Removal Center. I just don't remember. But it's Hiwassee Island, Meigs County, Tennessee, and it shows pictures of the buildings that were standing in 1938 when TVA took over. And that always interests me, that there's a schoolhouse and there's, some really nice homes on the island.
Yeah, I can speak to that, actually, because one of the interesting things about the geophysical data is that we found the locations of all those historic sites. So every single house that was on Hiwassee Island, we found in our geophysical data.
You could tell by the foundations that they were
in some cases
modern.
It was foundations. In some cases it was actually the distribution of metal artifacts. So the magnetic gradiometer we have is very sensitive to iron objects. So if you think about nails and screws and hinges and all those things that you might find in a house, even though the houses were torn down and the materials were removed, they left behind all the little things like that. And so the gradiometer is so sensitive that it can pick up the distribution of those patterns. And it looks like a shotgun blast, essentially, for listeners who don't know what it looks like. And we identified every single location where there was a historic house on the TVA acquisition map. We found it in our geophysical data. So all those house sites are still there, and they probably have archaeological value in that there are features still in the ground. There might be root cellars, there might be privies, there might be other yard work areas. All those things should still be there. That was not the primary focus of the work we did because we were looking for the Mississippian aspect, but because we covered the entire island, we do have now indications of where all those sites were, and they match up perfectly with the land acquisition map.
We appreciate you being here so much. This is like describing an art museum to somebody on the radio because the pictures are fabulous when you see, especially the aerial photos that they have that was like, was that Google Map Earth or something like that?
Yep.
You can actually see the outlines of some of those ancient things, even though it's been plowed for hundreds of years.
You can. And
or thousands of years.
One of the TVA aerials from the 1930s, when the island, before it was flooded, where the village is today, you can actually see the outline of one of the Palisades. Now, Lewis and Nieberg didn't see it in the 1930s, but there were two reasons for that. One, they weren't looking for those kinds of features. They were not aware those kinds of features existed because they had not excavated enough sites beyond the mounds. They were primarily focused on mounds. Because
they were pioneers.
They wanted to recover burials and artifacts, yes. So they didn't know to look for it. But two, it may not have been visible on the ground. And it's oftentimes we find in archaeology that some of the features we're interested in are only visible from the air. So you can see it in an aerial photograph in the 1930s, but if you walked on the ground in 1935 when that photo was taken, you probably could not find it because it had been plowed. It's only visible because you can see it from above.
In 1930, where did they get their drinking water?
They probably had wells, maybe cisterns to collect rainwater, but I don't think water was a problem there.
Well, I didn't think so either, but having good water to drink is a different problem than having water.
Well, we didn't used to have as much pollutant.
This is true. This is true.
The water
well.
now,
Yeah,
Well, in fact, the acquisition map from TVA does show, it's so well described that it does show wells in some of these house
That's
locations.
what I was kind of thinking. It would have probably rock-lined wells. I know that we found some rock-lined wells at some of the houses up in Charleston.
Folks, you're listening to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. I almost forgot there's someone calling us. Good morning, you're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, Ron.
Hey,
What's going on?
not much. What you doing?
I'm just sitting here listening to the program. I wanted to ask the gentleman there, how do they get those the findings and the sightings from the air? Do they do that by airplane, helicopter, drone, or how do they do that?
That's a good question. You're talking about the work that we did at Hiwassee this past year?
Yeah.
It's all ground based in that if you I'm sure you're familiar with a lawnmower. One of the instruments we have, the GPR, looks like a lawnmower. It's on a cart. It's on a baby jogger, 3-wheeled cart, and it has an antenna that rides in a carriage that actually has to make contact with the ground. So we run that back and forth over the ground, just like you would be mowing your grass. And each time it runs a pass, it's collecting data that are stored in the computer that we then recreate a 3D grid with later to process. The other instrument we have, the gradiometer, doesn't actually make contact with the ground. It's about a foot off the ground, but it's sensing the data that's there. And essentially what that one does is it tells the difference between the Earth's background magnetic field and the local magnetic field. And we go out and we calibrate that, we get a 0 reading, and if we run that over a burned house, for example, or a large piece of metal, there's a disruption to that magnetic field and it gets recorded. So, but both instruments require us physically walking the entire island. And I can't tell you how many miles we walked, but it was a lot. So it's not air based from a satellite or from an airplane. It's us walking on the ground.
Now, you can go to Google Maps, and you can see pretty good stuff. You won't be able to see all the stuff you see, of course.
No, that's correct.
But you can get some features off of Google Maps, right, when you look down on it. Pretty amazing what you can get off
You can see a lot of detail.
Okay. So that the argument that wasn't really an argument, it was a discussion that you and Deb were having there a while ago about the river and where the island's located up there at Blythe Ferry or off of Blythe Ferry.
Who wins?
If you come out of Birchwood, going down towards the road that turns right at the church there that goes out toward the removal park,
Yes.
you're in Meigs County.
Right.
You go to the river straight on Highway 60 over there, and when you get to the river bridge, halfway in the middle of the Tennessee River, you're in Ray County.
Halfway. So Ray County's on the other side of the river.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So what's on the other side of the island? Is that McMahon, or is that still Meigs?
Still Meigs.
So it's Meigs on both sides of the island.
That's still Meigs County.
All right. Yeah. You're okay.
Yeah, but that's it's all the whole island there is in Meigs County.
Okay. All right. That makes sense, Bob.
Yep. Okay, guys. See you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Hey, Byron, I tell you what,
Mr. Meigs County.
he knows about this stuff now.
Well, a little bit.
Yeah.
Been over there several times there.
Yeah.
We used to go over there a lot years ago there, 70s there. Bing Maps. Have you ever looked at any of the aerial photographs they have on there?
That does not ring a bell to me, no.
Bing Maps is...
Oh, Bing Maps. Yes. Okay, yes. I'm sorry.
On the bird's eye view, you can actually see these hut sites on a lot of them. The way they're laid out, the lights got to be right when they took the photographs there. So, but you can actually see the round hut floors where they're laid out. And I took that over to Dr. Jones over at Lee University.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asking him what they were. I noticed it on several different places there, and I said, what are these? He said, it looks like Indian huts or houses to me. And I said, that's exactly what I thought. And you would be absolutely surprised the number of those things.
Well, that does not surprise me. The number those sites are pretty dense, and I'm actually not surprised that they're visible on an aerial photograph. I need to find those so I can take a look at them myself because
Bing Maps.
Bing Maps. Okay.
Use the bird's eye view.
Bird's eye view. Okay.
And man, you can see a lot of those things, and you can probably see a lot of the rectangular. Like the Cherokee, their houses were rectangular, and you could probably see those on there if there were any present at the time there, but. I think what you're seeing is you're seeing the post holes, and
that may be in some cases. It may be that some of those houses, particularly the square ones from the earlier periods, were built in trenches, and so those trenches show up really, really well.
Yeah, the ones I was looking at were mostly round. Some of them are fairly large. Some of them are smaller, but you would expect that anyway. Because I'm sure they had different
size houses. That's right.
So, and TVA is. When they did the archaeological survey of Hiawassee Island, had a lot. They reconstructed some of those houses there using the same original post holes and everything. That's really interesting there. And I captured a lot of those and I put them on my computer there so I can show people what they really look like.
They're pretty neat when you see them.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a YouTube video this guy made not too long ago, and he made his own house there, and he used exactly the same methods there. He dug post holes and put his post and everything in. He napped his own tools there and made his own pots, and I thought, boy, that is really interesting.
It's a lot of work.
There.
Yeah.
I mean, he had his knowledge down pretty well. He could make the pots pretty functional there, so I thought that was really
That's
interesting.
neat. Yeah, that's really neat.
I just happened to hear you guys on the radio, and I thought, I'm going to stop in there and see
good.
who that is.
Well, I'm glad you did.
And see, tell them about that Bing Maps.
Bing Maps. I'm gonna make a mental note and I'll check that out.
Yeah. Savannah Creek out off Highway.
411?
Well, no, off Highway 60 out there. It's a in between, like you're going from here to Highway 58, take Mayhem Gap Road, and on the left up there you go past Savannah Creek, and up there, boy, there's a big extensive site out there. There's also a big extensive site out there on Gunstalker Creek, and I said, man, I knew that people had found arrowheads and things of that nature out there years ago, but I had no idea that village was that extensive there.
Some of those villages are very, very, very big.
Yeah.
They cover acres and acres of ground. Yeah, they're
So,
very intense.
So Hiawassee Island, Sean, you do a lot of other projects besides this. I think you've worked for your current company for 10 years.
10 years, that's right.
How's this compared to other places from a historical value and what you found, or is this a big find or just another day at work?
This is definitely the high point of my career so far.
Oh,
and
great.
I'm not exaggerating. I have worked on a lot of different sites in a lot of different states. I've been in a lot of different places, and I'm always grateful for the opportunity. I love the work, but there's no doubt that this has been the high point of my career. I've enjoyed the work. It's fascinating to be able to work at Hiawassee because, again, as a young archaeologist 20 years ago, I knew about Hiawassee Island because everybody knows about Hiawassee Island. Everyone has looked at the book or picked it up, or everyone hears about it in intro to archaeology classes. But if you'd asked me 20 years ago or 10 years ago or even 2 years ago if I ever would be working at Hiawassee myself, I would have said, no, there's no way. Why would I be at Hiawassee?
Mm-hmm.
Yet here I am, a year later, with the good fortune to have worked with TVA on this project and to have been at Hiawassee. And on top of that, so let me back up. Just saying, the grateful for the opportunity to be there to work. It's wonderful professional opportunity, but to find what we found and to recognize that Hiawassee is still one of the premier archaeological sites in the entire southeast, not just this area, but the entire southeast. It really rivals Etowah Mounds in Georgia, Okmulgee Mounds in Georgia. Those sites are different in that they're national parks, so they're protected and interpreted in a different way. But Hiawassee is on the same scale as those sites. It is fantastic. The remains are still intact. The site is there, and I'm not exaggerating. It is a national treasure. It's a national treasure.
Living here, we all heard of Hiawassee Island for other reasons. It's the big island down before you get into the Tennessee River, and people have hunted on there before, and things, and we've always heard people went over and dug artifacts. So over the years, you've heard everybody talk about that, and of course the laws have changed now, and we hope that's ceased. But just knowing that the fact that is such an extensive, and after seeing your presentation, I was going, I did not know all the things that you told me about on Hiawassee. You had 30 minutes, and I was sitting there just amazed, and I chased you down as you got off
You
the stage. Literally,
You did.
He's a little guy, and I just grabbed him and held him up in there and said, "You're coming to Cleveland to talk on the radio show," and like I say, and we also thank Sean come into town yesterday. We got an opportunity to ride him around Cleveland and look at things and show him where we thought mounds were, and he told us we were crazy about every time. So, but
you're looking, and that's the important thing.
We wanted to find those mounds like down at Etowah.
Right.
Yeah, we want those big platform mounds, and so in Tennessee you can find a lot of big hills that may be flattened off at the top and look like a mound. And he said, no.
Nope.
We may have found two, right?
We may have found two. You did show me one spot where it was there. The setting was correct. It was right near the river, and they looked about the right size, and there was no other topography around there. So in that case, I think it's a maybe. We'll say maybe.
We sent you some pictures without all the grass on it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so
I'll take a look then.
Some of the those mounds though were smaller mounds, small conical mounds there, you know, and they're typically burial mounds. I think
That's right. They are burial. We talked about that yesterday. Yeah.
And
That's what he told us, that the mounds that we'll have in this area will be close to the river, a big body of water, and they'll be smaller, and they'll be just a small mound.
Right.
And when you say small, you know, tell us dimension.
It might be today that you might see one that's only 2 or 3 feet high. You might see one that's maybe 5 or 6 feet high. That would be rare, and it's because they've been plowed for so long that as they get plowed, the dirt gets spread out back into the field, and the dimensions are exaggerated too. So the basal dimensions might be 30 feet by 30 feet, or you might see one that's 100 feet. But it wasn't that size originally. It was much smaller than that because it was conical and it was built out.
Yeah. Well, the ones that we showed him yesterday I don't think they've ever been plowed because they're right up against the tree line, right at the river.
Probably not.
And the roads on this side, on the other side, all kind of plowing and everything. You know, and of course, it could be someone took a bulldozer and stacked up 2 big mounds of dirt over the years. That's
also possible.
That's
yes.
always possible too.
Yes.
But they just look suspicious, as Deb says. You know, but now if people think they have a mound, don't dig into it.
Don't dig into it.
What would be the best thing for them to do?
The best thing to do is
they could buy some of that equipment you have for about $30,000.
They could. They don't need to do that. The easiest thing to do, what I would recommend, and maybe Aaron will concur with me, is to get a site form from the Tennessee Division of Archaeology. They're available for download. Anyone can get one, and fill out the information on the site form and turn it into the state so there's a record of it. It doesn't affect anyone's private property. The government's not going to come and take your artifacts.
Everybody's afraid of that.
Now, everyone's worried about it. It has nothing to do with that. It's just it's a record of it being recorded so that someone else could study in the future, or if there was some kind of undertaking at some point, it would be considered in that.
Okay. Hey, go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Well, I'm better then. I wanted to ask you that Hiwassee Island.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they name it that?
It's in the Hiwassee River.
Yeah, but Hiwassee, Georgia is nowhere near that.
Well, that's a different Hiwassee. Hiwassee is some type of Indian name. I don't know if it's Cherokee or Creek, or do you know, Aaron? Anybody?
I don't know offhand. I would say it's probably a Creek name. Would be my guess. It's not. I don't think it's a Cherokee name.
Yeah, and it was also called Jolly Island because Chief Jolly, and Chief just means he was the head guy on the island. It didn't mean he was a royalty. Oh, it didn't. Yeah. There is no Cherokee Indian princesses. Let me just spoil that for all you people who think you have a Cherokee Indian princess in your background. There is no royalty in the Cherokee Nation, okay?
That guy said he was from North Carolina or South Carolina?
North Carolina.
What part?
I live in Greensboro.
Greensboro.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of Nana Haley Dam?
I have. Aaron has too. She's shaking her head yes.
My dad helped build that.
Yeah.
Back in the CCC WPA era? Okay.
I wasn't born then, but he's told tales of it.
Well, now tell them what you did for a living.
We made moonshine.
That's right.
That's past tense, right?
Past tense.
Well, she claims it being past tense. But
was it any
Now,
good?
Ron, you keep that going. I don't make that stuff no more.
No more. Do you still have any left?
No.
Well, after that raid that time, you had some left, didn't you? They didn't find it, did they?
Oh, yeah. About, I guess, 100 gallons.
Yeah, I don't know what the word Hiwassee means. Barney, have you ever heard of what it means?
No, it's a Cherokee name, but I would think Hiwassee Island is probably named because the confluence of the Hiwassee River flows right there. And
let's say it was a big island. It was 700 acres before they flooded, and now it's 300, 400 acres.
Right, that's right. Yes.
So it's still a pretty big island.
Oh yeah, it's big.
Okay.
Sean says it's really big when he walked back and forth over it for about 2 months.
I spent about 3 months there walking, so yeah, it's big.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Hey, folks, it's time for our mid-morning break. We'll be back here in a few minutes. Well, we play a song called Gone Home after our commercials, and it's for dedicated to all those people who have left us, and people in Colorado. We bless them for the deaths they had there yesterday. We'll be back in just a few minutes here on Old Town Cleveland.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WHOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Checking to cash. The cash you need today is waiting for you at Check Into Cash. It's your money, so come in and get it.
Get a payday advance today for up to $425. At Check Into Cash, we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
The cash you need is right here, so stop worrying and stop in to Check Into Cash today.
Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Hardwick Clothes, America's oldest tailor-made clothing company, has been making our best-selling navy blazers for 134 years. Visit Hardwick.com to get the $295 wrinkle-resistant travel blazer at the price of $195. Order by 3 and get by 10. Free next day air. Hardwick.com, America's oldest, and sewn in Cleveland, Tennessee since 1880.
All right, folks, we're back here in Old Town Cleveland, and you can call us here at 614-5553. go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. We're having a lot of fun here today. We got Sean Patch here and Aaron Pritchard, and we're talking about Hiawassee Island and the amazing finds and things at Hiawassee Island. And as Sean said, it's a national treasure to have something like that in our area.
Absolutely.
And we just wanted to share that with you. Hey, go ahead, caller.
Well, hello, Rod and Debbie and who else?
Oh, man,
Hey, Miss
Miss
Ella. How are you, darling?
Did you get that 6-pack of beer I mailed to you?
No, it never got here.
Well, I bet you the nurses drank it. What do you want to bet?
Probably did.
Yeah, I hate that. Well, has Mark come and visited you yet?
Hey, he's been here.
Ah.
He lives here, you might as well say.
Oh, my.
Oh, my God.
Wow, we got a big snow.
Did you? How much snow?
How much snow you say was on the ground? About 4 inches?
Whoa, not 4 inches. I would say 1.5.
1.5. Well, if you're from Tennessee, that's a big snow.
That's a big snow over here now.
Is it snowing over there yet?
No.
No, it's 70 degrees here.
Well, I miss that weather.
Yeah. It's real pretty day.
I did need some covers because I just had one thin cover. And there was a girl that worked here.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Walmart, bought me one of those small covers.
Taking care of you. Well, we appreciate them taking good care of you, Miss Ella.
And then another girl gave me another cover, so I don't need those covers no more.
There you go.
Well, then if you get that 6-pack of beer I sent you, you'll be plenty warm.
These girls help do my nails. They roll my hair, and
Well, we're glad you're doing well, Miss Ella. Thank you for calling.
all right.
Thank you. Bye-bye. I had someone online here that checked on this Hiawassee Island book. It's called Hiawassee Island, an archaeological account of 4 Tennessee Indian peoples. She bought it on Amazon. She got a good used copy for $32, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's about what I paid for this one.
And we understand. And the annual Christmas parade is next Saturday. I don't know if it's a daytime or nighttime.
I believe it's a nighttime and early evening parade, and then they'll be doing the lighting of the Christmas tree on Friday evening. And they usually have music and the carriage rides and those kinds of things downtown.
And next Saturday is is our guest. When your brain stops, it just stops. You know, the guest will be that guy, and he'll be talking about that.
Jim Burns will be talking about the Redback Hymnal. Doris will be here also, and I think they're going to have some other guests that come in, so it should be a really fun time for those of you who like gospel music. And we'd like to mention it's a shop small day, and it wants you to shop at your small real retail outlets, such as the Museum Center at 5 Points and Red Ribbon, and go by the spot and get you a hamburger. And last night we had dinner at a local establishment, Jenkins, and we're so always a good place to eat.
It was very good. I was impressed.
We just flooded you up here. We just put the river up.
Aaron just pointed that out to me. I love it. That's great.
Now,
isn't that beautiful?
We never know if the cameras will stop and the river will keep flowing, but this will all be on YouTube, and you may be frozen there, but everything, you'll hear all the audio at least. But and Aaron, you have first Aaron, I pointed to you. Aaron, family, it's from Knoxville area. You married, children, anything of that nature?
I am not married.
Boyfriends?
I have a boyfriend.
Okay.
He lives in Alabama.
Oh no.
He lives in L.A. Lower Alabama.
Alabama. All right. So, because there's some guys out here to be looking at you on TV going,
Someone just mentioned that there's a new place to eat downtown, and I believe it's open, and it's in the old 5 Points Pharmacy. And
they're at the underpass. They
have sweets such as fudge, and they have hot dogs and hamburgers. We haven't been there yet, but we'll need to get down there and see them. And I found an old picture of that building last night, and I got really excited. I understand that the Coca-Cola Foundation, if you can find pictures of old buildings in your downtown area that had a Coca-Cola sign painted on the side of them, they will recreate those. And I found a picture from the early 1900s of the Morse Pharmacy, and there was a small, faded Coca-Cola sign on the side of that building. So I'm hoping that we get that repainted here real soon. I have submitted it to the person that can get that done. I thought that was exciting.
Well, that's great.
Get excited, Ron.
And Sean, your family, real quick.
My family, I have a wife and 2 children. I've been married for almost 18 years. I have 2 daughters, one 13 and one 7.
And and 13-year-old, you told me she has a boyfriend now.
She has a boyfriend now. Yes.
So life has changed at your house.
Life has changed in my house. Yeah, I roll with it.
And you're not the important part of the family to her anymore, right?
Not right now.
Well, welcome to parenthood.
Yeah, I understand.
And then my children are about 7 years apart too, and I understand that. And when they turn 13 or 14, they change. Not bad.
No, not bad.
What's her name? In case
her name is Josie.
Josie, it's not bad that you're changing, but your dad's still cool, very cool.
She has other interests now, which is fine.
Yes.
I knew that would happen.
Yeah.
That's so young.
Yeah, he probably said that she wouldn't date till she's 30, but she probably don't go out on dates yet, does she?
She did have she's had a date or two. Movie dates. It's
yeah.
what a 13-year-old does. It's okay.
Yeah.
I can live with that.
So, but no drive-ins or anything.
No, nothing
Okay.
like that. Nothing like that. No, it's all supervised.
And your wife's a teacher.
My wife is a
professor, right?
English professor at Elon University.
Elon, okay. They play UTC quite often in football.
Oh, that sounds right.
In the same district, same conference, I believe.
Yeah, she's been there for about 10 years. And, yeah.
So that's great. So does she correct your papers when you write
She
them?
does. And when I ask her to read technical reports, which is rare now because we're always under deadlines, she always comes back and says, "Why do you write like this? Why do you have to?" And I said, "Well, it's just the way the discipline writes." But I have her read the professional articles that we send in for publication. I have her read those because she does make very good comments. She knows grammar better than me. I'm a better writer today because of her, so I appreciate her insight.
I've been working on a novel for 20 years and probably work on it for another 20 years, and then it'll be gone. No one will ever read it. But I just sit there and type, and and thank goodness the computers often will correct some of the words as you go, and then I'll just sit down and these thoughts come in, and then I'll go back and read it and go, what the heck did I say?
Yeah.
What's your novel about?
It's called Apple Core. It's a murder mystery.
Oh.
And so it has everybody that is killed in the murder has an apple core sitting on their forehead. They're found dead with an apple core. And of course, now as DNA changes and all these rules, I have to go back and change my novel. So everybody said, well, they'll do DNA on the apple and see who it is. Well, the person that's murdered ate the apple.
Oh.
So
the evidence is gone.
So I've got the first chapter written and the last chapter. It's all that Phil stuff in the middle.
Yeah.
And I'm writing the screenplay as I go too, because it will be a movie.
Well, don't wait for 20 years.
Or at least maybe an episode of Criminal Minds.
Well, yeah, it's I'm going. I don't know. I wrote a book on time management, but I haven't got it printed yet. I keep procrastinating. Literally, I have one, and I'm going to have to go back and change it because, we were talking about personal devices. You used to have those little Casio units that you put everything. Well, now you just do everything on your cell phone, and so I'm going to have to go back and change that. And but yeah, I wrote a book on time management. It's pretty good. Like if I ever finish it, it'll be even better. Isn't it terrible? I'll have to change the start date on it several times there, but
that's great.
It's not like Deb. Deb wrote 4 or 5 books, so she gets them printed and out and everything, and she did win a national award.
You told me that. Yeah, that's
for her book, Confederate Voices. The Daughters of the Confederacy, the national organization, gave her a national award for saving Confederate history.
Oh wow!
So
awesome.
it was pretty good book, and she's done very well with it. And she's the brain of the bunch. I'm just pushing the buttons over here. That's all I can do. So, once again, we're talking about Hiwassee Island on the Hiwassee River, of course, before you get into the Tennessee River. It's located in Meigs County on both sides, we have determined now, which makes sense now. And then also that he's going to be doing a study on Ledford Island. This is all being done for TVA. They have hired Sean and his company to do archaeological studies there. Basically, it's the ground penetrating radar. They're not digging anywhere.
No
right?
excavations. That's right.
And before we go on, all you people who are listening, do not go to you can go to the islands. Don't take a shovel with you. Don't take a big stick and dig into the ground or pick up anything. Aaron, will you explain why now?
Yes. It has been illegal since 1979 to dig archaeological sites on federal lands. TVA for many years did allow people to do some surface collecting, and I think that's where the hobby grew. But now, since 2006, we do have a policy that you can't pick anything up off of the ground either, even if it is exposed. And we do that because we are trying to maintain the context of the site. It's not just because we want to keep it for the archaeologist. We work with federally recognized tribes. A lot of these sites, they like Hiwassee Island. Both the Creeks and the Cherokee think Hiwassee Island is pretty important and is a big part of their history. So, So we work with these groups who prefer that this stuff stay in place. Like, we ourselves as archaeologists have started to do less excavation and more preservation in place. That's one of the reasons why we hired Sean and his group to come and do the non-invasive archaeology, where we're doing archaeological investigations and we're not doing any excavation.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do actually do some excavation, it's going to be limited, and we'll have like some specific research questions that we'll be answering, and we'll be able to go and pinpoint smaller areas.
I think that's the great thing, that you don't destroy now to look at things. I think when I got to go on a tour of Moccasin Bend probably 6 or 7 years ago, one of the most fascinating things to me was where they could prove that there had been gardens up on the side of the hills. They were tiered gardening, and it hadn't been destroyed. Let's get this call.
Go ahead, caller.
Hey, this is Byron. I was just up there a minute ago.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was going to ask him was about that map, that old map that had the Indian mounds listed on it. They're in red, and I can't remember who it was. I was going to ask him about that so I could give that information to Debbie there and Ron. And
Did you tell me that you thought that was from the University of Alabama?
well, it's not from the University of Alabama, but I thought they had it on their archives, but I couldn't find it on there. And I thought maybe Guess would.
Have you ever seen a map that has mounds in this area marked on it?
Yeah, lots of the TVA acquisition maps from the 30s show mounds. If the mound was known at the time as a mound, it was depicted on a map. So there are lots of maps that do show mounds.
Yeah, this particular one, they're in red.
Okay.
And it shows, I'm thinking maybe it's for the entire state of Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
But,
well, that's a possibility. If there is, it's not one I'm familiar with, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
There's a book. There's a book. Something that
I downloaded parts of it on my computer. I tried to download the whole thing, but it wouldn't download, y'all. But,
sometimes you just can't get it to do what you want it to do. Okay, thanks, Byron. If I figure that out, I'll let you know.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So you can't dig, and the Cherokee and the Creek and all the Indians that ever lived in this area, they take all their sites very seriously too. And you have to realize that they have got run off their sites, and so it's Go ahead, caller, you live.
Hey, this is RD.
Hey, RD, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, enjoying your show. Hey, Aaron's in there?
Yes.
He's from Red Clay?
No, not Aaron from Red Clay.
No,
Aaron from TVA.
She's from Knoxville, TVA.
Okay, I know Aaron from Red Clay. Hey, I was wondering if I could put y'all on the spot this morning real quick.
Oh, well, of course, you always do.
Nah, you can't
Go
put
ahead.
us on the spot.
Dug out one box's artifacts and I've taken a picture, try to use proper grammar here, taken a picture of a very large piece of incised pottery. It's got a handle on it. What do you have? Can you put me on hold or give me an email? Maybe look at it real quick and tell me what area you think it's from. If I
Honey, we can't look at anything while we're on the air, but if you want to, Sean will give you his email address because somebody else may be wanting it.
Sure, I'd be happy to. My email address is spatch@newsouthassociac.com. spatch@newsouthassociac.com.
S-P-A-C-H?
TCH.
S-P-A-T-C-H.
Like a patch that you put on the tire.
Right.
Okay.
At New South Assoc, ASSOC.com.
hardwick.com.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah, if you send me a link, and I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, no problem. It's probably got a picture of it's almost as big as a Tennessee license plate. I've got that in perspective.
Oh my, that's big. And you say it's incised?
Yes, it's incised. Actually, I'm sitting here looking at a box right now. I've got almost a whole bowl. I've got a box of stuff that was given to me long, long ago. But this is a really big piece, and it's got a handle on it. Looks like they're taking a reed and jab 3 lines, and then one line or 1 or 2 along the top where the lip is, and then about 3 inches down, they've got a line of 3. Looks like they just took a reed and poked it for grip, I suspect.
Yeah, what you're describing, it sounds to me like it's a Mississippi insured, and it's probably one of the later ones that we would call Dallas incised. I don't know for sure without seeing it, but I would say that's AD 1300, AD 1500, something like that.
Well, we'll send you that picture.
Yeah, please do.
All right. Listen, thank you all very much. Enjoying the show.
Thank you.
All right.
Ron, I was going to ask you just for a moment. Erin was talking about TVA, but she's working with a stewardship program at TVA that I've heard her talk about, and I think the listeners would be very interested because it applies to what the questions you've been asking about Hiawassee. So, do you mind?
Go ahead.
Telling us about your stewardship.
My Thousand Eyes.
Thousand Eyes, yeah.
Yeah, we've just recently started a volunteer site stewardship program where we are training members of the public who have an interest in historic preservation. They go through a 2-day workshop, and then they get assigned archaeological sites on TVA land to monitor on their own schedule, of course, because they're volunteers. But we did our first volunteer training in North Alabama, near Gunnersville, Alabama, and we did our second one a couple weeks ago in Johnson City, Tennessee. And so this is just a very new program, but so far we have 18 volunteers total, and they're very excited. They go through this workshop, and it's a day of classroom training and then a day in the field, and come out, and so far they've been really excited about helping TVA help protect sites.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I'm retired,
Well, it's very popular with retirees.
Oh, well, that fits me, doesn't it? Hey, go ahead, caller, you're live.
Hey, Ron, it's Fro Daddy.
Hey, Fro Daddy, what's up?
Fro's been trying to call, and the phone's been crazy.
Well, yeah, the phone's been, Fro is very seldom up on Saturday, period.
Now, you know better than that. I get up once a month. I get up early on Saturday.
Once a month. What's that for?
Well, speaking of archaeological finds, I'm out here at Busy Bees Consignment. You can find all kinds of old, cool, vintage stuff out here digging around. At the,
that digging's allowed, isn't it, Fro?
What's that?
It's allowed there. You can pick things up there, right?
You got that right. You don't even need a metal detector. But I'm out here at Busy Bees. They're having a grand opening out here on Spring Place Road. If you go out Wildwood from town, turn left on Spring Place, and it's just out there past the Fresh and Low or the...
Yes.
Groceries. They change the name of that grocery every week.
Yeah.
But
this is Calfee's for a long time.
It's if you come out 64, you go on Durkee, and come out that way where it dead ends into the red light there at Spring Place. That's where we are.
Yep.
I'll be here till about 1 o'clock. You guys will be there till 12. I might try to call you back in a little while.
Well, you do that. Is there any bargains out there?
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, the first person that pulls in, comes out to see me here at Busy Bees, gets a $10 gift certificate towards anything you want, and a home crocheted cup holder that I'm using right now. And there's an orange and white one here that's worth coming just for that. So the first person that comes out here and mentions Blue Radio here at Busy Bees gets a $10 gift certificate and a homemade crocheted cup holder.
Wait a minute now, is it a cup holder or a can holder, Fro?
Well, it depends. In your case, it would be a cup. In my case, it would be a can.
Oh, okay.
In Matador's case, it'd be a quart.
Yeah. At Colt 45?
If you're listening to us, come on out to Busy Bees. We're also going to try to call in one more time, Ron. We got a grand prize of a $35 personalized gift basket. It's pretty neat. And you guys come on out to Busy Bees Consignment. It's almost Christmas. You can find something for your loved ones. I'll be here at Spring Place Plaza at Busy Bees till 1 o'clock today.
And they can meet the one and the only Fro Daddy.
Yeah, we don't have any, as you know, we don't have anything to give away from the radio because we can't afford it, but I do have one T-shirt that's very tight. It must have been Matador, so I'm wearing it.
Well, it's a size extra small, right?
Extra small.
Hey, for the right price, I might give this out.
All right.
But hey, I appreciate it. And get back to your.
Thanks, Fro.
Good show. I'm listening to you out here live. We'll try to call in one more before you leave.
All righty.
If you don't call, I'll call you.
The first person that shows up and says Whoop Radio gets a $10 gift certificate and a homemade crocheted stand or cup holder.
Oh, damn. I wish I could leave now.
No hot dogs, Ron. Sorry.
Oh, no hot dogs. I can't come.
All right. Thanks, Fro.
All right. Bye-bye.
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 You know, this Hiwassee Island's a lot like a lot of other sites all in this area, is that you have ancient sites and you have, Cherokee sites and you have, sites all the way down the line. It's fairly well documented. On Hiwassee Island, did you find any Civil War stuff?
We did not, and we did look at that in terms of the background research we did, and we did not find any records of there being any Civil War activity out there. So we did not find anything associated with that.
But you'd probably have to dig. You could you see some metal objects.
You'd have to.
And bullets and things like that.
You would have to either see them on the surface, and in Hiwassee today it's not plowed, so there's not much to see. It's basically grass, or you'd have to use some other method, metal detecting or something, which we didn't.
And so I know at Moccasin Bend the Civil War activity was extensive there, and I was just curious with the ferry if there was some landing there or passing over the line.
So it's pretty amazing that there is a Mississippian mound, right?
Right.
Are there one or two, or
well, there were several actually. There were several, and the big one, what we call the platform mound, was completely excavated by WPA. It was done on purpose. They excavated the entire thing, and the location of that mound is still there, but that was right at the head of the island, and a lot of it has eroded in the river in the ensuing 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were other mounds that were also excavated, almost completely excavated, and there's a few mounds that are left there, but they're not platform mounds, they're burial mounds. And there's only a few of those. The others are either submerged now under Chickamauga or they were excavated. So there are only a couple left.
It's just amazing that something that was 1500 not before Christ, 1580, right?
Right, so 500 years ago.
That's pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing, and it is pretty amazing. And you asked me a while ago about my experience at Hiwassee and what it meant to me, and I said it's a highlight of my career, which it is to this point, and probably a letdown everything I do from this point forward because it was so exciting. Except for Ledford, right? Excuse me. But yeah, even for someone like me, and Aaron will probably say the same thing. We deal with these things we deal with archaeology every day. It's our jobs. We look at artifacts, we look at site reports and all these things, but we forget sometimes that these are people. They lived the same way we do. They lived in houses. They had to eat every day. They had to get their food. They had to grow their food. They had the same concerns that we have, and so I don't think enough about the people who are actually attached to these things that we're looking at today. We're looking at artifacts because that's what people leave behind. But what we're really trying to get to is understanding the people better. And that's the important part of archaeology.
Now, being an archaeologist, we're sitting here talking. Our area is predominantly a lot of Cherokee history, apparently some Mississippian here.
Mm-hmm.
But you also would do, if there was a primitive village somewhere and it's all gone, you could do archaeologists and find out where the buildings are. So it's just not all about Indian.
No,
right?
No, you can. And a lot of the work we do is focused on historic sites. It might be something that was from 1950 or 1850 or 1750. Under the federal environmental and historic preservation laws that guide the work we do, the cutoff is anything that's 50 years old or older. So it could be something from the 1950s today. So if you think about an old home site that was built in 1900 and was abandoned in 1965, and the house is torn down now, and there's some outbuildings left, that would be an archaeological site. If we identified a site like that on one of our projects, it would get recorded, it would get a number with the Tennessee Division of Archaeology, and we would have to do some kind of work to evaluate that site. And there's a legal threshold that sites have to meet in order to be significant. And if they're not significant, then there's no further work that's done. And if they are significant, then some kind of additional work would be done. That's under a federal undertaking. But the point there is that we look at archaeological sites that are 10,000 years old all the way up to 50 years old. It spans the entire time range. It's a long time span.
So would you do anything, for example, Civil War related?
We do lots of Civil War archaeology as well. I've worked on Civil War battlefields, and I've worked on Civil War campsites. They tend to have different resources. And in those cases, it's almost always metal detecting because that's the only way to really find the artifacts.
Mhm.
Although we have done some geophysical survey work on a couple of battlefields with very good results there too. We can find buried earthworks or rifle pits or things like that that you can't see on the surface.
And sometime you're doing whether road projects or other new developments coming in, and
That's right.
you go and do the studies, and which sometime could stop a road or.
Well, it can actually, we get that question a lot, and it can never, what we do can never stop a project, a federal project. Unless it's done poorly. If it's done poorly or the agency doesn't do what they're supposed to do, then it can be a problem and it can cause delays. And unfortunately, those are the types of projects that make the headlines, because someone will hear about something and they'll say, oh, there's a graveyard in the way, or there's some archaeology site that's in the way. Why is it holding up this project? Well, it shouldn't be. It's probably because someone didn't follow the process correctly. And there is a process that we have to follow. And if we do it correctly, and we're out there early enough in the environmental stage, we can help someone design their project to get through the process quickly, and they get it built, or they get their funding, and they move on.
And we know that a lot of the Indian tribes argue a lot of time with new projects come through. And like I say, we went to the symposium and heard some of those arguments and things. So, but we understand. Deb and I are big historians in this area, and they're tearing down old buildings, and we're going, oh my gosh, this building was built in 1800s, and now it's being torn down. Sometimes those buildings, that's about all you can do to them. Whoever owned the property, and they're in private ownership, they didn't take care of the building, and now they just have to come down. So if they're in good shape, we look at, say, how can we save that? And usually we lose.
Well, the important thing that I have to keep in mind is, yes, I'm an archaeologist and I have a job and I do it every day, but I'm also a citizen. I care about history too. I care about old places and old houses, and I have recognized over the years that in my professional job, we can't save everything. The idea is to strike a balance between preservation and progress. And if something can't be saved, then we want to document that before it does get destroyed.
Exactly.
And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and we know that throughout the area here that there probably mounds have been bulldozed over, and there are hotels on them. There's a place in Gatlinburg.
Cul-de-sacs and subdivisions.
Yeah, there's in Gatlinburg. There's a part of a mound still left there on what is that? The Little Pigeon River. River.
It's in the front.
And there's a hotel sitting there, but they put up a historical marker and saved what they could once they realized what's happening.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's sad that it's gone, but at the same time, they at least recognized and saved it, and they know a lot about it. So we understand that. I'd prefer to have them there.
Sure.
But I don't own the property.
Right.
If I owned the property, it'd be saved.
Well, a good example is we talked earlier about Bigsby Creek over at Princeton Hills. That's a perfect example of where there was a site that was discovered after the developer had plans to build the subdivision, and once they recognized the importance of that site, he sold it to the Archaeological Conservancy, so now it's in preservation forever, and it will always be there. And so that's a win. It's a preservation
I don't know if you
win.
heard the story not, Sean, but some gentleman maybe he was a Lumbee Indian, I don't know. There was some gentleman that slept in a tent on top of that area for months to make sure people weren't coming in there and bothering things at night. And it was kind of, that was, and then when they got ready to reinter the remains that they found, I believe he and some other folks did what they thought was an appropriate ceremony for that. And so it was handled extremely well by Mr. Sharp, because he could have come in and gone, oops.
But really, you think that's probably just a village along that creek?
Yes, not a mound.
Yeah.
So the mound is probably
what we see today is
somewhat man-made, but
right.
They've been man-made to keep the water out of their house.
Yeah, it's definitely not. What we see today, it looks like a mound today, but it's not a mound. It looks that way today for one of two reasons. It was either plowed or material was dumped on top of it to create that artificial look that it has, or what I think is more likely is that all the surrounding area around it was graded down to a depth so that they could build houses on it. And so what you see now is this artificial mound that looks like a mound, but it's not actually a mound. But I don't know the answer to that. I suspect it's that the area around it has been graded.
I think the only picture...
It's a good thing that it is saved.
But it's saved.
There were bodies found that were buried into what we call the mound today.
Yep. Yeah, and that site is preserved, again, by the Conservancy in perpetuity, so it will never be developed.
That's good.
I love that.
And it's nice that Jim Sharps, it's a developer there, develops a lot of our property here, and we really do thank him for doing that.
Oh, it's great.
And a good friend.
And it is made so that you can follow the slope and go up to the top, and, and they've kind of made it a public place that people kind of walk around and stuff, which is fine. Let's get this call.
Go ahead, caller. You're live on Old Town.
Hey, Ron. Hi, Debbie. Good morning. This is John. I really enjoying the show. And I just wanted to share a story with the listeners and Sean and them about Hiwassee Island, about the during the Civil War period out there.
Go ahead.
There was a General Spears that I read about in the official records of the War of the Rebellion, and he had about 2,000 men out there, and they wintered at White's Ferry and on Hiwassee Island. And actually, I ran across a personal diary, and I don't recall if it was a Federal soldier or a Confederate soldier, but there were Confederate soldiers over on the Meigs County side at the ferry, and the water was very low in the wintertime, and the soldiers all got to be friends, and they were walking back and forth, and they could actually, it was stated at the south end of the island, which is probably down around where the ferry, where the ferry is, well, we know where the ferry is now, that they could walk back and forth, they could wade, that the water was about waist deep. And one of them needed tobacco and the other one needed coffee. So they would swap back and forth tobacco and coffee, and they made friends, and they all promised not to start shooting at each other, that they promised not to shoot each other when the fight started in the spring. So,
we hear stories like that all the time because things around here got so sloppy that they couldn't get from one place to the other, and so they just had to hunker down where they were, and they made friends and all that. But unfortunately, I think they probably did have to shoot at each other.
How many troops did you say was, John?
Well, I think there was about 2,000. The main group was at Sell Creek, and it was a General Spears, but he had troops at White's Ferry, and also they were on Hiwassee Island. So, yeah, that was occupied by Federal.
Well, you kind of have to think that was an important spot to control.
Yeah, I think that's when that was when Chattanooga was under siege.
Yeah, about that time.
Sherman had snuck across the river. You know what I'm talking about.
That winter
when Fort Bragg set up on the top of the mountain, did nothing,
or not? Yeah, Bragg sat on top of the mountain and waited.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, there were lots and lots, as you know, John, troops here in what's now Bradley County at that time, too, that wintered down in the Black Fox Valley and over in the Blue Springs Valley and over on Dalton Pike. Massive numbers of soldiers.
And also, I read, in fact, Alan might call back in and know more than I do, but I know that the very famous Nathan Bedford Forrest Confederate Cavalry was at Blythe, not Blythe, but at Birchwood, that winter, he was out there around in there. So
he may still be there, John.
Could be, you never know.
Well, they want to dig him up in Memphis. They may move him to Birchwood.
Birchwood would take him.
Yeah, Birchwood would take him.
Thanks, John.
Yeah,
always a pleasure.
I love that about the Princeton Hills. I learned a lot. I really enjoyed the show. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. That's one place that you can just drive through and get some idea. Now, that may just been kind of a high spot there in the village.
It could be. I had not heard that
The only
story,
picture I ever saw of it, and I can't even tell you where I saw it now, it was like a ledge, and it had trees growing on it. And it looks like to me, it may have been where the natural waterways had come in there. I don't know.
It's sort of, I think what Sean says makes sense. If I remember, that was just sort of a hilly area there. And of course, then Bixby Creek had cut it out, and there was a cutoff there.
Mm-hmm.
So he may have been leveling that, and when he hit the bodies and found that, and then that
really
just
don't
created
know.
the mound, like you said, or
But
mound look.
When I didn't question it. When I went to him for information, I will tell you that he had people making me copies of stuff, and
Yeah,
he was just
great guy.
And he had done some work over in Middle Tennessee, and he knew what was coming. And he just kind of stopped everything, and he was very patient, and he waited, and it's a beautiful subdivision.
Sean, I know that we talked that you know Dr. Sullivan,
Yes.
who's originally from here in Cleveland,
Yes.
and she showed a presentation about up at the Bend of the River Farm, where they were actually removed 5 bodies, I believe, from this 4 or 5 bodies,
small amount.
and they're at McClung now.
Mhm.
Do you know anything about that area up
I'm
there?
not familiar with that one in particular. I can take a look at it, but Lynn, because I know her personally,
Yes,
Lynn
yeah.
certainly would know that area well. And if she came and talked about it, then she's the expert.
Yeah,
She's
she
the one.
actually showed pictures of the bodies being dug up. You know, this was, of course, WPA and TVA, and never said that they were Indians. I got the impression that they were maybe Cherokee.
Ancient.
But and that area up through there has, at the bend of the river, has a lot of bottom land, and then it goes up.
What was it? I'm curious. Was it flooded by the
Yes,
river?
portions of acres.
The bend still, of course, when you get further up that way,
Did it take 23 acres off of that farm?
something
lot?
like
Something
that.
like that.
It's it's not as big as Feck. The farther you go up north,
Which makes sense that if they were kind of slightly mounded, they would have been right on the river.
And that was part of Fort Cass, where they actually grew the crops to feed the Cherokee when they
And
were
to
at
feed the
Cass.
soldiers.
So it's part of Fort Cass and all that area where we took you down
Yeah,
where the tobacco
I recall.
was
Yeah.
back in there.
Okay.
And
We actually got to show Sean where tobacco was hanging in 2 different places in Bradley County, which is
That's
probably
unusual.
the only 2 places it's hanging. We were really excited to do
we
that.
didn't see the zonkey though.
No,
we
zonkey.
did not. We did not. I heard about it though.
Yeah, you heard about the zonkey, and then maybe the new zonkey. We don't know.
Yeah,
That's a story we'll tell you in a minute. There, I always think that's interesting that we know that TVA had to come here and remove bodies all along what the rivers are, and we know them today. And it's interesting at the National Archives, we were looking at some of the pictures of TVA removing bodies, and the family stood there and watched as they dug them up, put them on pickup trucks, and hauled them somewhere else. And that's just interesting. Now,
These
here-
historic cemeteries, or
well, they were just cemeteries that were in the way of the water when they
yeah,
flooded.
we moved a lot of cemeteries.
How many? Do you know how many bodies they removed?
No, but they moved them into another cemetery.
Yes. Yeah. But it's interesting. The family sit there and watch their loved one, and usually
Yeah.
there's a lot of wood coffins, at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And of course now, you living in this area, they always say they didn't remove them all. There's some of them still they flooded.
They did not. It was up to the families.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on whether or not they
Or
wanted to move them.
or were there some lazy people that didn't remove them and said they did? That could happen.
that I don't know.
Statute of limitations is over, folks. No, but they're probably unmarked graves or family members who on
Yes.
farms, and the family as they die off and everything probably got flooded. I mean,
There are still unmarked graves out there.
well, yeah,
today on our property. Yeah.
Deb is the graveyard expert around here,
Yeah.
and we were looking at a place where they said they were just stones there, and the stones are gone now, and a lot of times slaves or Cherokees would have been buried. Cherokees were not mound builders, and didn't. Is that right, Sean? They were not. Cherokee were not mound
I'm
builders.
sorry, I had him distracted.
Not in the sense that where they were building big platform mounds deliberately, but the Cherokee did create mounds artificially because they would have a council house or a townhouse, and then as those burned periodically every 10 to 15, 20 years, something like that, they would oftentimes build another one on the same spot. So the mounds did grow in that way, but they did not build mounds in the same way.
That wasn't their intention.
Wasn't their intention, right.
So,
but yeah, there are mounds on Cherokee sites that are a result of that process.
Ledford Island.
Ledford Island.
Tell us more about Ledford Island. I know that Ledford Island is near B&B Marine.
Mm-hmm.
That's my knowledge of Ledford Island.
That was Ross Ferry during Ross time here, right after the removal. Captain Ross.
Captain Ross.
He
okay.
actually ran a ferry there at B&B Marina. And I should know what Indian lived there, but I don't remember now.
Ledford Island is another interesting site. It's another Mississippian site, it's a little bit later than Hiawassee, and it's different because it doesn't have, or did not have, a big platform mound. It did have the other elements of a Mississippian site in that it had a large palisade, a big plaza area, which is just an open area where there were no buildings and no people lived in those areas, but it was a communal center. And then there are lots and lots of houses out there at Ledford, and many, many dozens of burials were recovered there in the
So that
30s,
would
too.
tell us it's late because there was not a big mound
Right,
there.
yeah, there's a
That's
difference
kinda
in
like
the-
after they quit doing
Yes,
that. Okay.
that's right.
So now, how big is the island?
It's pretty large today. I don't know the exact acreage, and someone will I'm sure correct me. It's well over 100 acres. It could be 150. It could be 200. We're only looking at about 70 to 80 acres because that's as much of the area that's open and accessible for us to get the instruments in.
Now, is it TWRA, are they controlling that also like that?
Yes, it's also in
And
the
does
wildlife
people,
management area.
do people still farm it?
They haven't for 7 years.
Okay.
Right now it's grown up. We're clearing the vegetation off of it right now.
So Sean can walk.
That's right.
So Sean can get his lawnmower out there.
That's right.
That's what it looks like is a big push
You
mower.
just need to get him a push mower in front of it and just let him run down through there, and he could do both at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty grown up. It needed more than a push mower.
Now, are you ever think you'll ever get a riding tractor that can do this ground?
Well, interesting you say that because there are groups in Europe in particular who do what I do on a much bigger scale. So Hiawassee is a big scale for us. That was 150 acres, which is very, very large.
Yeah.
But in Europe, they have different sites over there. They have old Roman villages and medieval towns and those kinds of things in big plowed fields. So the Europeans have figured out ways to automate the data collection by towing them behind ATVs. And they, for example, will take a magnetometer, which is one of the instruments we have, and they create very large arrays. Instead of having 2 sensors, they might have 16 sensors that get towed behind a vehicle, and they don't have to set up grids to collect their data. They just drive where they want to go, and they have GPS-enabled data collection, and they can cover 30 acres in a day with an ATV, and we can cover maybe 4 or 5 acres when we have to walk it. So that tells you the scale of things in Europe. So there are people who do that. My company probably will never go that way because it's a huge monetary investment to get to that, and because we don't have the kind of acreage to survey that they do in Europe. What we did with TVA at Hiawassee was one of the biggest one we've done to date, and maybe the biggest one we ever do. So we probably won't make the investment to go that route, but it is possible.
Time you walk down this way and this way 3 or 4 times, you would certainly say, "This is a big island."
It's a big island.
So
it's a big island.
So, but now 100 acres. I didn't realize Ledford was that big.
I know from my memory here is that we are looking at 70 to 80 acres, and those were all what used to be fields. They're, as Aaron said, it's grown up, so they've had to clear it again, and it will be fields once more. But there are other areas of the island that are not accessible because they're grown over, completely vegetated. So it's over 100 acres.
Okay, now what was? Do you know what it was before the river?
I don't recall offhand what it was.
So it was
larger
bigger.
than that. Oh yeah, much larger than that.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you look at old aerial imagery, it's a big island. It's several hundred acres before it was flooded.
So you think you'll find Mississippian, but earlier? I mean, later.
I think we'll find. Yeah, we should. There's definitely a Mississippian site out there, and we should easily find that, and we'll see what else we find on top of that. It may be that we find some surprises like
Well,
Hiawassee.
I've never heard that there's Cherokee lived on there, but it would make sense they would.
They could have. I have not heard that either, and I haven't started the research yet to be able to answer that question today. But it's certainly possible.
We haven't mentioned that, of course, Sam Houston did stay on Jolly Island, which is Hiawassee Island, and I don't have kept up with the stories, or some people know a lot more about Sam Houston than I do, of course. But he lived there. I think you read that he just went out adventuring, and
his mama had put him to work, I think, in the family store in Blount County, and he didn't much like being tied down, so he just kind of left one day at the age of 14 or 15.
He was a teenager,
and he just kind of left.
But he was adopted by Chief Jolly into the tribe, and
Which
lived there for a
I've
couple
explained
years.
to Ron sometimes is that some people were Cherokee by choice and they adapted to living like the Cherokee. He's a really interesting fella. He ended up being governor of the state of Tennessee. Then he went out to the Republic of Texas, which he was president of the Republic of Texas twice, I believe, before it became a state. And then he served as some kind of elected national figure from there. So he was quite the character in lots of different ways.
Yes, he was.
He started a small school up in Blount County, and that the building's still there. He was born in 1793 in Virginia.
so
3 years with the Cherokees on Hiawassee Island, I'm reading.
so when you get Sean done with Ledford Island, where are you sending him next?
She doesn't know.
Yeah,
yet.
we haven't planned that far out yet.
But I've seen on the map that there's other small islands up there close to Hiawassee. Are they still visible? They're
I don't
looking at me
know.
like I have a monkey sitting on top of my head.
I don't know. I'd have to look at a current aerial to
The
be able
ones
to answer
around
that.
it,
They have a Towhead Island
those are underwater, I believe.
Those are
and
underwater.
Ziegler
Those are
Island.
underwater.
They're underwater. Okay.
I want to say something about TVA. Aaron has heard me say this before, but I never get tired of saying it because it's true. I have worked in my career for a long time, and I've worked for lots of different state and federal agencies. TVA is unique because it's a large land managing agency in the East, and there aren't many of those. TVA is the only agency I know of in the country that is applying geophysical survey like what we do on the scale that we're doing it, and that.
Oh, we're thrilled.
It's thrilling. It's exciting. It's just exciting for me to be able to go do it. Yes, I'm excited about that. But the fact that I understand how these agencies work a little bit and how this process works from the procedural side, TVA is on the cutting edge of applying this kind of technology. It's all non-invasive. There's no excavation, and the types of data that we're generating with TVA will be useful for generations to come. I cannot exaggerate or can't emphasize this enough how important it is that TVA is doing this, because they really are the only agency I'm aware of in the entire country that is doing it like this.
And how exciting in this area where you
And
can
it's
get
here.
a cross section
Yeah.
of so many native people.
Not only what you're doing there, but what they're doing in Charleston with the walkways through the cypress swamp. That's amazing. Let's see if we got a call here. Go ahead, caller. Are you there?
They fell asleep. Call us
Oh,
back.
I got them back. All right. Call us back, please. Sometimes our phones work good, sometimes they don't. Just any of our
It
equipment.
depends
Some
on
days
how
work
much-
better than it does other days.
Depends how much of a jelly donut got down into the keys during the week.
Well, just to add to what Sean said, the geophysical work is really amazing to us because we're getting to see this visual across, and it's a great management tool for us because we're looking at all these resources without putting a shovel in the ground.
That's
I love
great.
it.
Good morning, live in Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, Ron, it's Bob Cash.
Bob Cash, how are you, bud?
All right. Listen, I was going to ask your archaeologist there. I have a chipped eagle. I'm not sure what kind of rock it is, but it supposedly came from Decatur. And then from over there also, I've got one other item. It is a petrified piece of wood. It's about the size of a silver dollar, and it's got a bird carved on it. I wondered if he might know something about those.
Well, it's hard to say without looking at it, and I'll try to be gentle. But when we hear and see about things like that, we often think those are fakes. I'm not saying yours are. I don't want to say that they are because I don't know for certain. But those are that would be a very rare type of artifact and a very rare symbol to find in an archaeological site, based on the experience that I have. Not saying yours are, but we do see those from time to time, and when it's out of the ordinary for the normal symbolism we see on the types of artifacts that we recover, and so my feeling would be that it might be a fake.
Okay.
Bob, we'll come over and take a picture and send it to Sean.
That's a good idea.
Well, hey, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that, buddy.
We'll call you.
One other thing I heard this morning, Red had called in. Now listen, is Red an Apache Indian? Do you know?
She's a Redfoot.
Somebody said she'd scalp a boy in a minute now.
Let's see. She was a Navajo or a Arapaho or a Chad. No, that's not right.
No, that's something different.
Ha, ha, ha. I hear you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye. Good. All right, once again, how about the island? People cannot dig on that island, right?
No, sir.
Against federal law, not just ain't some state guy going to be federal. They're going to come and get you, handcuff you, drag you across the river, back over to the other side. And if you make it, then they'll do it. We got another caller here. Go ahead, caller.
Hey, Ron, it's Fro Daddy.
Fro Daddy.
Fro, we apologize. The phones have been hot this morning. Go ahead.
That's okay. I'm out here. I've been busy out here at Busy Bees. And I forgot to tell everybody, they've got all this homemade bakery stuff. I mean, this lady, Marina and Valentina, they have a place called Just a Bakery, and they've provided, I mean, I'm talking about it's worth driving out here just to eat some of this stuff they've made, homemade cookies and cakes and drinks. It's all free. Come on out to Busy Bees. And earlier, we've already had a bunch of people show up. The little lady just showed up and she goes, well, I know you. I listen to you every Saturday.
Man, you sound so much alike, Fro.
Yeah, you and Ron look so much
and
alike.
we look alike, too, yeah.
I said, now, you just told on yourself because I'm here. I'm not on the radio. That's Ron and Deb. But anyway, appreciate it. I was going to get in one more squeeze here to tell everybody to come out to Busy Bees, their grand opening today. Spring Place Plaza. Can't miss it. Where Dirt Key hits Spring Place or, come out Wildwood, turn left on Spring Place. You can't miss us on the right, just past the Fresh and Low Grocery. But this place called Just a Bakery. I mean, I'm telling you, anybody named Marina and Valentina has to make good stuff.
Sounds good. Now, are you driving the Whoop van?
Well, I had it towed last night, so it'd be here.
All right. Well, that's about. I drove it once, and the brakes work really good. I mean, you touch the brakes and it stops, and so.
Last time we drove it, I made Mandor hold on to the bumper and drag his feet.
I didn't have no. Going was a little problem, but stopping was never a problem.
The only thing about the van is I finally had Doughball have it pulled out of the one parking place where it's been for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
The sun had completely, dented taken the color out of our wrap, so we had it back in the other way. So now now it's even.
Oh, faded equally. That sounds good. Yeah.
Faded. Yeah.
We ought to.
I'm gonna let y'all get.
Thank you, Fro.
Tell us what that is again, there, Fro.
I want to remind everybody to come out to Busy Bees. I'll be here till 1 o'clock, and the next person that comes out here and says, I want the personalized $35 gift basket. It'll be a great little Christmas present. The first person comes in here and says, hey, Fro Daddy, I want that gift basket. It's yours. So come on out to Busy Bees Consignment. $35 gift basket is yours. Anybody else that shows up gets free stuff, cookies, cake, and homemade orange and white. Lisa makes these homemade can wrappers, coffee cup holders.
Yeah.
I call it a beer holder. But anyway, keep your hands warm in the winter while you're drinking a beer.
Let me. Do you have any Whoop radio stickers to give away?
No, we're out.
Okay.
We're getting 40 now.
That's 2 years now, right?
Yeah. Well, we're shooting every 3 years. We order 5 shirts and 10 stickers.
There you
All
go.
right.
We pace ourselves
Yeah.
for our dozens of listeners. Thank you, Fro.
Hey, it's so bad that when a tree fell on my wife's car and I asked the tow company to stop, I had to drag him down so I could scrape the sticker off her car. Hey, Busy Bees Consignment, 2242 Spring Place Road. Just come on out. You can't miss us. We'll be here for another hour. I'll be here. They're open till 5. And come check them out. They got all kinds of little goodies, and especially all the food that's out here. Come on out.
Fro Daddy will be the one in the sunglasses because he's never seen daylight.
I'm also asleep on the bench right in front.
All righty. Thanks, Fro.
We'll see, Fro.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ryan. We'll see
Bye.
you guys.
All right, bye-bye.
I cannot believe how fast this 2 hours has gone.
Neither can I. That's how it's gone.
I think I told you, people never believe that. People
Wow.
never believe it
Yeah.
when I say you will not believe how fast
We
this
do a lot of shows, and I enjoy all of them. But this is, to me, is one of the most interesting shows we ever done.
That's great.
It's just a lot of fun to know about the tremendous amount of history we have right here in the river, and
we're going to hold you guys to the fact that when you get finished with Ledford Island, please come back.
we'd love to have you come to the museum and do a presentation for the masses here.
We'd
And
love to.
when Dr. Sullivan come down and talked about the bodies, the
was
place was packed. So
Yeah, we'd love to do
we'd
that.
love to do
That'd be great.
that would be great. And thanks
we might
TVA for
come
everything
out,
you're doing.
maybe come out and actually video you guys doing some stuff.
At Ledford?
Yes, we'll talk
Okay,
about that.
sure,
but
sure.
but for the presentation,
Sure.
we'll have some still pictures and maybe them actually operating the
We can put
radar
we
device.
put a wireless mic on Sean and
Hear him go.
No, if he wants me to push it, there'll be a lot of that.
A lot of grunting, right?
And I won't go fast. I'd be real slow.
It's a really interesting process, and I think that was the most exciting thing for me. I've always heard about the radar, the ground penetrating radar, but I had never seen it in action until we went to this symposium in Cherokee, and that was really exciting to me to see it be so much smaller and mobile than I thought it was going to be.
Now-
And then looking forward to it being, even better.
Sean, if I want to buy one of those just to play around my yard, how much is it going to cost me?
That's going to be about $20,000 to $25,000.
Okay, and then I wouldn't know what I was doing.
You get
then.
two.
Yeah, and then it would take a while to learn how to do it. Actually,
well, that's what amazed me too. Is I thought it was going to show me images that look like things, and all it is that it's big fuzzy things.
Yeah.
And to the trained eye, that big fuzzy thing, you probably have a good guess what it is. To me, it's a fuzzy thing under the ground.
To Sean, he's tried to teach me, but it's difficult. It takes a long time to really figure out how to read the data.
that's the hard part. The easy part is operating the instruments. I can show anyone how to do that, but the hard part is having the experience to know what you're right.
And that's it. It's the experience.
So if anybody would like to learn, just go at $20,000-$25,000 investment. It's cheaper than dirt track racing now.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
that's
the car
right.
is going to cost you.
The engines are more than that.
You won't win as much prize money.
Aaron,
you won't wreck as much either.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having
Anything
us.
else you would like to say before we go off the air?
No, I just really appreciate what you guys are doing.
We're trying to
I
make
love your
people
show.
aware. Well, thank you. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of a fun thing, and we get real attached to our callers too that call us every week.
Well, you know, we've done moonshining and snake handling and schools
we've
and
done
churches.
radar.
And now
Well, I'm
we've
going to start
ground
listening. I'm going to start listening.
ground penetrating radar.
radar.
That's a new one for us. Sean, you got any final comments?
No, I want to thank you guys for the invitation to be here. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm thrilled to get to talk about Hiawassee Island. I'm glad Erin was here too because she's great to work with, and I just want to say thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Aaron drove here from Knoxville and Sean from Greensboro, North Carolina, just to be on the show. So we'd like to thank them a lot. And Sean, if people, your email address is spatch@newsouthasssoc.com.
That's excellent. You have an excellent memory. That's
Whoa,
right. Yeah, very good.
What'd you have for breakfast?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't go to Hardy this morning. I went to
the spot.
Small shopping day. I went to the spot in downtown Cleveland. You know, a trademark, a landmark here in Cleveland. So we say every week it's everybody's responsibility to save history. You should get the pictures from out from under the bed and out of the drawers, out of the shoe boxes, and get some little white labels and write down who's in those pictures or what that picture is about. Because when someone passes, there's a lot of history dies in everybody. Get you a video camera, get your phone out, and record your dad, your mom, your aunts, your uncles, and them just talking. I just did my uncle, who's 89 years old, the last one left on my mother's side, and we sit down with our camera and record him for 2 hours just talking. We sort of asked him a few questions, and he talked about my grandfather and great-grandfathers and things of that nature, and not a great production, but someday when he's gone, this will be a great part of history that we saved. You can do that stuff now. I mean, you can get cell phones to do your recording for him. You can do anything. It's just very, very important that you take care of that. Thanks to the people like TVA and Sean and Byron over here for saving history in our area. And folks, we'll always remember Pearl Harbor, but
will we remember Aunt Pearl? See you guys next week on Old Town Cleveland.
Bye-bye.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into Cash.